That was fun. My daughter is running the soundboard for the first time ever. And my son-in-law was just on his very first announcement package. How about that? Let's go, fam team. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, and really to all of you who are worship team, production, our skeleton sit-up crew, let me just tell you, awesome job. It is hard. It's hard not only to set all this up in a high school each and every single week, but then to actually make it sound presentable, and it's just a lot of work. And so we're just glad to be able to offer this to you, to those who are watching online. This is such a great opportunity that we have to be able to share our services this way, to worship together this way. Something that several years ago we couldn't have imagined, but here we are. And so we're also in the house, and I'm excited about that. So here's where we are. This is week 2 of this series. We started talking last week about fringe benefits. And if you're in a job or career where you have fringe benefits, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. These are really just those extras that come along with your salary. So it's not just your salary. And the thing is, we sometimes, isn't this true? We sometimes end up in positions in jobs or careers simply based on the benefits, and the problem with that, because it's like, I don't even necessarily want this job, but it just, they match my 401k contributions, and, it's just very helpful, and they provide some health insurance. So it's not my dream job or anything, but, I'm going to do it for now. And the problem so often is you end up in a job that you don't like, or that you kind of feel stuck in because you're there for the benefits and there for the wrong reasons. And so this is what we said last week. When that happens, when you only focus on the benefits of really anything, not just your job, but then what was once your goal becomes your burden. The thing that you thought you longed for actually becomes a burden. And this happens in all arenas of life, especially when it comes to things we just really want. And come on, let's be honest with ourselves. We've all been there. We've all been where, in a season where we've been like, I want this. I've got to have this thing. And you want it so badly that you're willing to overlook, whether you meant to or not, but you're willing to overlook some of the consequences and some of the potential cost involved in that thing because you just convinced yourself. You justified it, came up with a reason. You just said, I've got to have it now. Doesn't make sense, but I got to have it right now. And I'm just willing to do whatever it takes, and I've just got to have it. And then what happens is that very thing that we longed for becomes the very thing that burdens us, because now you realize, I don't really need that. I don't really want that, but now I'm kind of stuck with it because, I still owe on it. I still got to pay for it. I still got to take care of it. I've still got to manage it. And the problem is, that's one thing, in our lives and with our stuff, but it's another thing to take that approach when it comes to Jesus and Christianity. And this is really what we talked about last week, because so often, and this is true, so often what we pay attention to are the benefits that Jesus has to offer, what it takes to be a Christian. And being a Christian. And the truth is, I actually believe that being a Christian does provide some benefits. I actually do. Just being a Christian in our culture, in our day and age, I think it makes your life better, to be honest with you. Just kind of following along. Even if you don't believe in Jesus, following the things that Jesus says, I'm telling you, it will make your life better. It just will. You'll be a better dad, you'll be a better mom, a better husband, a better wife, you'll, be more generous, you'll handle your finances better, you'll, handle relationships better. It's just true. It just makes us better. But the thing is, Jesus, and this is what we said last week, Jesus didn't come to give you these benefits. That wasn't the purpose. He didn't say, I came to the earth in order to provide these benefits for you, in order to make your life better. It makes your life better, but that wasn't the point. Really, Jesus just came to offer himself. And that's where we ended up last week. You see, the real benefit isn't what Jesus can do for you. That's what we said last week. It's just Jesus. It's just Jesus. But, and this is really leads me to where I want to go today, because so today I want to do a couple of things. I want first, let me just give it to you up front. First, I want to ask a question of me that I want to try to answer and bring some clarity to. So I want to try to answer a question. And then at the end, I want to just then pose a question that I want you to consider, okay? And so the question that I want us to think about today, that I want to try to answer is this: what does this really look like? This. What does it really look like for you and me, like practically in our everyday lives? I mean, honestly, and for some of you, this is the question that you have. You've been thinking about this since last week. Matter of fact, as I was talking last week and I got to the whole it's just Jesus, and you were thinking, I know, but what does that mean? I mean, even if you're not a Christian or you're exploring faith, or maybe you've just kind of walked away altogether, it could be that this was the very question that you had that you just couldn't get past. It was like, it's kind of was your hesitation, because your question is like, why does it have to be so much about Jesus? Why does the Jesus thing factor in? Like, does it have to be so much about that? And the truth is, even for Christians, sometimes we have the Sunday school answer as to how to answer this question, but we're not really sure. Like, and if we pause and we're honest with each other over a cup of coffee, we'd be thinking, how would I answer that? I mean, why do we say that? That Jesus is the thing. It's like he's the deal. He's really the benefit. He's the real answer. He's my everything. He is my all. And it's really all about him. And but what does that really mean? Why do we say that? Because there really is so much more to this. And the thing is, I understand questions like those because I ask questions like those all the time. It's what helps me write sermons like this, because I'm thinking, okay, so if we, got to one point last week and it was, hey, it's all about Jesus. Well, then this week, I just want to know, then why? Like, what does that actually mean? How does this actually kind of flesh itself out? And here's, I really thought, I thought about this for a long time. And I think I boiled it down to this one word, that all of those questions that we have, like, what is this really about? What does this actually mean? What does it mean? I think it all boils down to this one word: faith. Faith. But more specifically, think about it this way: who or what is the object of your faith? Because the truth is, let's be honest, all of us have some faith. We all do. Everybody has faith. We exercise faith, and we put our faith in something or someone. The question we're asking is, who or what are you putting your faith in? Because for some of us, we put our faith in ourselves, if we're being honest. Put our faith in ourselves and our own ability to care for ourselves and to navigate life and to figure things out and to make decisions. And then others of us, it's like, it's all about our stuff. If we're being honest, we put our faith in our stuff and our job and our financial security and what the stock market's doing. And that's kind of where our faith and our value and our identity really is. And then others of us, it's, especially during different seasons, we put our faith really in other people and what they can provide for us and do for us. And we're just trusting you're going to always be there for me and you're going to provide the things that I need. The problem is then we go through seasons. The problem with this approach and this kind of faith is that at some point we get to a place in our lives where we realize those things don't actually continue to be faithful. In other words, they're not actually worthy of my faith. The something or someone where I've been placing my faith, we realize they just didn't measure up at the end of the day. And and maybe you're young enough and you've not quite experienced that yet. For you, maybe it's still your parents, or it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or it's a loved one, or it's a public figure. But at some point, everything and everybody ultimately will disappoint. And the older you get, the more you realize that. But then, isn't it true that when you go through those seasons where the everything and the everyone kind of, falls apart a little bit and your trust in them falls apart, isn't that true? Isn't it true that it's in those moments that you most are willing to transfer your faith to something or someone else? It's in those seasons where it's like, okay, so if, I've gotten to the end of myself, like I'm not doing a real good job. I'm not sure I even trust myself anymore. I've tried it for a long time and I've been doing it on my own, or, maybe it's this other person or it's this other idea or it's my stuff. And, everything eventually just falls flat. And you think, so what then is worth putting my faith in? That's really the question that I want us to consider. There's really no one and no thing that is completely faithful. So then where should I put my faith? That's really the question. Who or what is worth putting my faith in? And of course, if you're a Christian, the answer is pretty easy for us. What would we say? It's Jesus, right? It's Jesus. But here's the thing. That's an easy answer. But my goal today is to push us a little bit more. Why is it Jesus? And one of the things, because we are willing to put our faith in Jesus, the reason for that, the reason that we then continue to put our faith in Jesus is really because of the things that he said. We actually believe the things that Jesus said about himself and who he said he was, okay? So we believe that, and so we begin to structure our lives around that. And so here's one of the things that Jesus said about himself when he talked about this idea of, hey, put your faith in me. And you've heard this before. This was a kind of a word picture that Jesus painted. He said, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine, who listens to what I say and puts them into practice, well, that's like a wise man who built his house on what? On the rock. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, the rain came down, the streams rose. You've heard this before. And the winds blew and they beat against that house, yet it did not fall because, why? It had its foundation on the rock. But then the reverse is also true. This is Jesus speaking. He said, but everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man. That's crazy. You've actually heard Jesus, and yet you've chosen not to put those things and apply them in your lives. And so that's like somebody who just built their house on the sand. Not a good idea. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and what happens? And it fell with a great crash. You see, here's what I think Jesus is pointing at here, because it's as simple as this. I mean, you talk about, there's not really a simpler analogy for what it means to actually put our trust and our faith in Jesus. Jesus is saying, when you put your faith in me, and when you decide to listen to what I'm saying, but also then to apply those things to your life, I'm telling you, that's so wise. That's like building your life, building your house, building the foundation of every aspect and area of your life on a solid, firm foundation. And it doesn't matter, because then things are going to come at you and things are going to get difficult and you're going to go through difficult seasons. But the truth is, even when those things happen, when your faith is really founded and grounded on me, the rock, only, not even what I can provide, just me, well then ultimately it's going to continue to stand. Your faith isn't going to fall because it's founded on the rock. It may waver. It may shift back and forth. There may be some doubt and there may be some insecurity and some questions, but it's not going to fall because your faith is grounded and founded. But what I love about this picture is that I think Jesus is really giving us a way to evaluate our faith. I think faith is the crux here. Faith is the issue. But Jesus, what you often miss when you're reading through this, Jesus is really giving us a way to evaluate our faith. You want to know kind of what your faith looks like in Jesus? Well, he's saying, well, then go through some difficult seasons. He says, this is how you can evaluate your faith. You want to know? You want to be able to look at other people? It's obvious. Because when the storms come, not if, we all know it's a when, right? Like when the storms of life show up, faith that is built on Jesus, on me, he would say, it's not going to fall. Faith that's built on me will not fall. Faith that is grounded in me. In other words, you have decided to follow me. Wherever that leads you, wherever that takes you, and you are trusting not in what Jesus can or can't do. Your faith is in who Jesus is. Big difference. And that's it. Like if you want it, I mean, you literally could walk out with just that in your pocket to know that Jesus, when you put faith in Jesus, you're putting faith in the kind of faith that he's talking about. That solid foundation is to say, I'm putting my faith in who Jesus is, not in what I think Jesus will do or won't do. But those who don't, he would say, those who choose not to build their faith this way, it's just like they're clinging just to the fringe of my robe. And they're just hoping for some benefit. They're hoping some things will happen, and yet it doesn't. And their faith ultimately experiences a difficult season, and it falls. And nobody wants that. Well, this is, believe it or not, this is exactly what the people of Israel struggled with over and over again for hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus showed up. Hundreds and hundreds of years. Their relationship with God was extremely shaky, to say the very least, because they would go through these cycles. God was always faithful, but they continued to not be faithful. And so they found themselves in this cycle of constantly rebelling against God, and then God would punish them. And so then they would come back and they would repent, and then there would be restoration. And then the cycle would repeat, and it would continue until finally one day Israel fell with a crash. I mean, finally it came to the end, and the Babylonian Empire came in and they conquered Israel. They literally burned Jerusalem to the ground and really defeated them multiple times, and then came in and took thousands and thousands of Israelites and deported them all over the Middle East. They sent them all over. I mean, can you imagine? You talk about coming to the end of yourself. You talk about a rocky, difficult season. You talk about the storms of life. I mean, this was, as a whole, the entire nation as a whole was at a loss. They were devastated. This was a loss of national identity. Their families were split apart. They were growing up and raising kids in foreign countries. They had no national identity. It was over, and really they had no reason. You ready? They had no reason in the world to believe that anything about their situation was ever going to change. That's the situation. It was bleak. I mean, I can't even paint a bleak enough picture. It was over. God certainly wasn't going to fulfill his promises to them. And yet, watch this, even in the midst of that, can you imagine? Even in the midst of a situation like that, there was always a remnant. God always had a remnant of Israelites, a remnant of his people who were willing to continue to put their faith on the rock, to build their faith in their life on a solid foundation. It was just a few, but there was always a few. And they were willing to say that no matter what my situation is, I'm confident in who God is, not in what I see God doing or not doing. There was always this remnant of people, and they were able to say things like this. This was actually in our reading this week as we're reading through the Bible together. They were able to say, even while exiled in another country, because of the Lord's great love, we're not consumed. In other words, it's not actually over. Things look bad. We don't know where God's working right now. We're not even sure if it's going to change or, how long this is going to take, if it ever changes. But we're not consumed because we just know who God is, and he's a God of great love. For his compassions, they never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness, not ours, yours. Isn't that amazing? What would it take to be able to say that? In the midst of your darkest moment, to still say, not after the fact, not after you saw the miracle or you saw the season change or God all of a sudden lifts you up and brings you out of that grave, but while you're in it, to say, you know what this is? This is faith in who God is, not in what God does. And so here's what that faith is able to say, because following this is what they were able to say. And so I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Who is? The Lord. Now, what about what he can or can't do for you? No, just the Lord. God is my portion. Therefore, I'll wait for him. He's all I need. He's my everything. Even in my darkest hour, because I know I am confident. This is what that remnant of people, this is what they would say. Because I'm confident not in what God is doing or isn't doing. I'm confident in who God is. And God is faithful. And he is full of compassion and mercy and grace. And he loves greatly. And that's why we continue to rest our faith in him. And so their faith was solid. You could not shake it. This is exactly the kind of faith that was exemplified in 3 young Israelite men. You've probably heard their names before: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, here's what's amazing. These guys, they were growing up in a foreign land. They probably had no recollection of what it was like, to live in an era when Israel was at its greatest and at its peak, and it was amazing, and everything was, clicking, and they were this great and powerful nation with walls that were strong and an incredible army. Instead, all they knew was that those were maybe some things in the history books, but the truth is that was not their situation now. And they're growing up in a foreign land, and they're being tempted, baited, and forced to worship other gods, even the king of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar. That was the situation. I mean, here they are. It's like with no expectation, no promise that anything was ever going to actually change during this season, that this was just the end. They had no promise of that. This wasn't just going to absolutely change. This was the situation. Why would they continue to have faith in a God they couldn't see and that wasn't, providing and, meeting the promises that he had made to the people of Israel? And yet, standing in front of the king of Babylon, as he was threatening them with burning them alive in a furnace, this is what they said. This is amazing. Watch this. They said, if we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is what? Able to deliver. Able to deliver us from it. And he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. He's able to. Notice where their faith is. On what God is able to do, not what God is going to do. And so, that's what makes these next few words unbelievable to me. I mean, I might have shed a tear as I was processing this, okay? But even if he does not, King, we know what God is able to do because we have faith in who God is. We know what he's capable of. He could do an unbelievable thing. He could wheel us out of here on a chariot of fire and that doesn't burn us up, and it's going to be unbelievable and that's what God could do, and we know that. We're confident in who God is, but I'm just telling you, even if he does not, what does it take for us to be able to say that? Because even if God doesn't rescue us from this fire, that's them. What about us? Even if he doesn't heal me, even if he doesn't heal my dad, even if he doesn't heal my son, my spouse, even if I still lose my job, even if my marriage still falls apart, even if we have to file bankruptcy, even if we can't pay rent, even if I lose all of my relationships, even if my very life is threatened, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods and worship the image of gold you have set up. What would it take to be able to say that? You know what it takes? Unwavering faith in who God is, not in what God could do. God is capable. He is able to deliver us. He is able to do these things, and we have faith in those things. But the unwavering kind of faith that can go through difficult storms and seasons is the kind that says, but even if he does not. Because we have faith in who God is. I think they would say this is in my words. Our faith is built on who God is and not on what God does or doesn't do. Fast forward 500 years or so, and you end up at this scene that we looked at last week where this woman has reached out and touched the edge of Jesus' robe, and she's been suffering from something for 12 years or more, and she's instantly healed. I mean, she doesn't even address Jesus. She just barely touches and reaches out for the fringe of his robe because she has just enough faith to say, I think this might could work. I think, if Jesus is healing all these other people, then maybe he's got a little something for me, and I need it, and so I want it so badly, and so I'm just going to reach out, and maybe if I just touch, and sure enough, she was healed. And Jesus turns around and he looks at her and he says, your faith has healed you. You're healed because of your faith. Isn't that interesting? But here's the question, because that's where we were last week. But can I just ask you this? What kind of faith was that? I mean, surely there's different dynamics, different sides, different components when it comes to faith. Because what kind of faith was this? Because she experienced healing with how many people did Jesus bump into that believed that Jesus could do something that weren't healed, right? Here's the kind of faith that she had. This was the level of faith, and this is really where we were last week. Watch this. She had faith in what Jesus was able to do for her. She had faith in what Jesus was able to do for her. But my question is, because this is where my mind goes, but would she have continued to put her faith in Jesus had she not been healed? Jesus didn't have to heal her. Even by just enough faith to touch the robe, because there were plenty of those opportunities where healing wasn't given, it wasn't provided. And so I just wonder, because I wonder this about me and about you and Christians in the 21st century. I just wonder, we may be good Christians and we go to church and we actually do believe that Jesus is the Son of God and that he came to this earth and that he died for you and for me and that if I just put my faith in him, that he will save me and that he will redeem me and make me whole and he will fill me. And I believe, it takes some amount of faith to believe that I can pray to him, right? That I can pray to this unseen God and that he listens to my prayers, that he actually hears me, and I actually believe that he's capable of doing anything he wants to do. Are you? I am. Absolutely anything he wants to do. We sing about it all the time, and we're so good at it. We sing about and why not? Because we believe that Jesus is all-powerful and that he's all-knowing and that he can do anything he wants and that he's faithful and that he's so full of grace and full of mercy and compassion. It's compassion. It's new every day. Great is your faithfulness, O Lord, and that's the kind of faith we often have. But my concern is, what if that's where it stops? Because why is it that so many of us struggle with faith and to keep faith? Because I see this happen all the time. I think more often than not, that's the kind of faith that is expressed when I look around the country and I see Christians scampering around, very defensive and on guard and nervous about everything that's happening. And I just wonder, it's like, how long is that kind of faith going to last? Because ultimately, you see people all the time and they go through something and they struggle with something and they pray over it and they believe it, but then they don't get the healing they thought they would have and they don't experience all of the joy and the amazing benefits that Jesus can provide, and there continues to be pain and sorrow and suffering, and they lose faith. And why is that? Because they had faith. Like where did it go? Well, see, this kind of faith, I believe, it's a beginning kind of faith, but it's a fragile faith. This is a fragile version of faith because I believe it's called what I call conditional faith. You see, conditional faith, the problem with having conditional faith, the reason it's so fragile is because when our conditions aren't satisfied or our expectations aren't met, then our faith falls. You see it all the time. I believe what Jesus can do. He is able. I've been singing about it, and I came to church because I've been looking for it, and I've been looking for a place to transfer my trust because I'm at the end of myself, at the end of my rope, and the only way I have to look is up, but I'm kind of, I'm expectant, and we're told to be expectant, to be hopeful, and to pray for miracles. But my question is always, well, what about when those conditions aren't satisfied and expectations aren't met, and that doesn't happen? You want to know how to evaluate your faith? Consider that. You see, and this is really where I want us to go today. That's really what I want you to see if you want to write something down. Conditional faith begins at the fringe. It's faith. It begins at the fringe. But unwavering faith It's built on the rock. I even had this picture, and I couldn't figure out how to illustrate it, because it was like, this whole like 2 word pictures in one, it's like the fringe of Jesus' robe, but also there's this idea of a rock, and a house being built on it. But then I was thinking, what about just like the edge of the rock? You kind of build, it's like, you put the corner of the house on the rock, because it's like, maybe, like, what if? I mean, it could be, Jesus is pretty amazing. He does some amazing things, and he certainly makes some great promises. And after all, I've got nowhere else to go. And so I'm just going to lean into what God could do and what God can do and what God is capable of and what Scripture says he's promised to do. But then what happens when those storms come? The house still falls, and faith falls apart. So that brings me to where I want to be today. That was kind of me answering the question, but now I want to ask you a question, because I think this is ultimately about figuring out, and this is really what I think we as Christians need to learn how to do, is to look inside ourselves and to really evaluate what kind of faith we're living. I mean, like being really honest, what kind of faith do I have? I wonder. I mean, is that even a question we can answer? I mean, is there a way for me to look in at myself and think, what kind of faith do I have? Do I have a faith that's just on the fringes? Or am I actually building my life on the rock, Jesus, just on who he is, not what he can do? Well, I don't know. How do I know? And here's the question that I want you to consider. Is Jesus really enough for you? Is Jesus really enough for you? We sing about it all the time, don't we? I mean, as I was writing this, I literally remembered some of those old songs. It's like, more than enough. All of you is more than enough for all of me. In everything, Lord, something, something. It was always about, God, you are more than enough. You are more than enough. But what does it take in our hearts to actually say that? I mean, seriously. That's a disturbing question. What would it take to actually be able to say, Jesus, you're more than enough for me? No matter what you do or don't do, or whether I see you at work or I don't, or I can't figure out what you're up to, and even when I'm doubting and even when I'm questioning, what would it take to still say, like those Israelites, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to say, but God, you are my portion. You're not coming through. My prayers don't seem to be answered, but I'm just telling you, you're my portion. You're all I need. You're enough. It's just you. It's just you, Jesus. Let me ask it this way. Can I just read this? That way it's like, okay, he actually wrote these down. He's not just off the cuff. Because these could be a little disturbing. So I just wrote some thoughts down to help us really chew on this. Because we might say, hey, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. And I believe in Jesus, and I believe in what he can do and what he's capable of, and he's faithful, and we sing about it, and it's amazing. And I believe that. I believe that about Christians, about most Christians. That's what we believe. It's Jesus. It's all about Jesus, and we sing it, and it feels good. But the question is that really enough, though? Let me ask it this way. Because maybe it feels like Jesus is enough when everything's clicking and the song is on the radio. But what about when your marriage still fell apart? God made these promises, and he rescued me, and he said that everything was, you can rest in me, and I'm going to comfort you, but your marriage still fell apart, still. You never overcame your addiction. What if you finally had to file for bankruptcy? What if you still lost your job? What if you still couldn't have children of your own? Or what if you lost a child? Maybe multiple children. What happens when you sat back and you watched as Hurricane Ida came on to land and thousands of people were either killed or displaced? Maybe you still lost every friend you ever had. Maybe you still suffered with chronic pain, and I'm talking every single day, every night of your life. And then at the end of the day, you lost your ability to reason, to think, and even speak. Now let me ask you, if you had nothing left but Jesus, would Jesus be enough for you? That's a scary question. If we're being honest, to really imagine, and some of you have been through some terrible things. Others of us, we've never really been challenged in this way. But the truth is, at some point we will be. A storm is coming. It will come. Things will begin to look different. And this will always be the question. If you had nothing left, I mean, seriously, can you honestly say, if you had nothing left but Jesus, would Jesus be enough? Another way to say it, watch this. Could you honestly say, Jesus is my portion? He's all I need. He is all I need. Because the truth is, He is. But He's not all you need because of what all He can do or has done. You ready for this? He's all you need. Here's how you can know He's all you need. Because of what He's already done. Period. And I had to grapple with this. I had to think. And I think I can honestly say, and this scares me to death, honestly, to say this. But if Jesus never offered me another thing, never did another thing for me in my life, except for what He's already done on the cross, it would be enough. Can you imagine what would happen if Christians began to have that kind of faith? Because that is the let me be clear. That is the only kind of faith that is unwavering faith. Faith that is grounded and built on who Jesus is. Not what He can or can't do. Because there will always still be suffering and pain and hurt and sorrow and grief and all the things that cause us to question and wonder. But the truth is, that's not the kind of faith you're asked to have anyway. The kind of faith we're asked to have is unconditional, unwavering faith in who Jesus is and who He has promised to be and all He has promised to do. Whether we see it, whether we feel it, whether we've experienced it for ourselves or not, the question is that enough? Is that enough? That's the kind of faith I want. Heavenly Father, what a challenging idea to think that faith is more than just circumstance. It's more than just condition. It's more than expectations being met. It's more than what you can or can't do, or what you're willing to do or not do. It's so much more than that. It really just boils down to who you are. That is the kind of faith that's unshakable, because nothing, good or bad, could ever happen that would cause that to fall away. We'll go through seasons. We'll go through questions and doubts, but man, faith that's built just on who Jesus is, that is rock solid. So God, my prayer is that you would help us to all be willing to and courageous enough to be honest with ourselves and to ask ourselves that question: what kind of faith do I actually have in Jesus? And to want and to desire that unwavering, unshakable faith that is built and founded on the person of Jesus Christ alone. You are enough. With your head still bowed, eyes still closed, I want to ask everybody in the room and those worshiping with us online, I just want to ask you, is that the kind of faith that you want? Here's why I ask. Because what Jesus has already done for you, whether you believe it or not, whether you realize it or not, what he's already done for you is enough. It's enough. So you can have questions and doubts and you don't understand this and understand that, but when you put your faith in who Jesus is, it is life-changing, life-altering. So I want to invite you to receive that, to receive Jesus today, and to begin to build on that kind of faith. I just want to invite you right where you are to pray something like this. Heavenly Father, I give you my life. I'm tired of putting faith in myself, in government leaders, in other people, in my stuff. It's all great, but it fails at the end of the day. I see that now. And I want unshakable faith. And I believe that that has to be in the person of Jesus. I know I'm a sinner, and I need Jesus, my Savior, my King, and I want you to be my Lord. So I give you my life. I give you my all. You are enough for me. In Jesus' name.